Hi, my name is Ann Elliott. I'm the creator and founder of HomeschoolingTorah.com. I hope you pull up a chair, get a cool drink, maybe a pen and something to write notes on, and most of all, get your Bible. We are ready for the next session of the 2022 Homeschool Family Conference, and today we're going to be talking about learning Hebrew and all kinds of other languages. At Homeschooling Torah, we care a lot about the Hebrew language, and that's the one that we focus on for all of our language learning. But everything that we're going to talk about today applies to learning any language, including teaching your children how to read, and honestly, it applies to just about any skill in life, like learning how to cook. So I think today's going to be super practical. I hope so. I am wanting to explain why Hebrew is so important to me. I'm going to go to Zephaniah 3:9. And Zephaniah is a little tiny book in the prophets, in the minor prophets, in our English Bible. And the very word Zephaniah, his name, is a great illustration of learning languages and how difficult it can be. I was raised in a very American small Baptist church my whole life. We learned how to read our Bibles, and in the King James that I had as a child, my Bible had like syllable by syllable. It would break it up for me like a reader's Bible, basically. This was way back in the early 80s, and I would sound out the names of all the people in the Bible and the cities and all those places, the prophets, the names of the books of the Bible, and that's how I learned to read. And so those names in English are incredibly ingrained. Another place that we had syllable by syllable all the English words written out was in our hymnal. So as we would read, they would write it by syllable because the syllables went with certain notes in the music. And so I learned to read by syllable with that. And by the way, it's a great way to teach your kids to read, is get a hymn book or just one of those reader's Bibles that divides the long words into syllables. But having said that, Zephaniah, in English, we would pronounce it Zeph and Naya. And so I put that on the screen to help you sound that out. But in Hebrew, it's Zephaniah. Very different. Another example would be the prophet Isaiah. It's very simple to pronounce this in English, syllable by syllable, Isaiah. But in Hebrew, that would be Yeshayahu, or if you say it like my instructor, Yeshayahu. I'm not even very good at that. It doesn't sound anything like Isaiah. The name Jesus, in Hebrew, that would be Yeshua, but I hear a lot of people saying Yeshua or a lot of other things. And so we get this difficulty learning another language when we haven't heard it spoken natively, we haven't been taught it since we were small children, and the people around us might all pronounce it in different ways. And it's no different than the names of countries. So when I was a child, I learned that down in South America, there's a little country called Chile. But of course I know now it's Chile. Mexico, or Mexico. I'm not even sure I'm saying that right. All of my Spanish-speaking listeners, you're probably giggling right now. My Spanish is not excellent. I took 2 years of it in high school. Don't remember very much at all. And the frustration is that my pronunciation is very slow and halting. So, hola, that's about all I can say. And even that, I'm sure I sound like I'm from Michigan. But having said that, if you come here to the state of Michigan, we have a little town. It looks, if you look at it on the map, like it's called Charlotte, but we don't call it that. We call it Charlotte. So everybody has different ways of pronouncing things, and unless you live in a place and are surrounded by the people who are speaking it every day, you're probably going to mess up. And I want you to just swallow right now and say, I don't care. I don't care if I sound dumb. I'm going to try my best. But anyway, let's go back to reading the verse from Zephaniah 3:9. And it says, and this is Yehovah talking, and right there I said his name, and there's a whole bunch of controversy over how to even pronounce that Hebrew word, but I'm going to just say it the way I say it. For Yehovah says, for then I will restore to the peoples a pure language that they may all call on the name of Yehovah to serve him with one accord. So what is the purpose of learning this one language, Hebrew, that we all believe is going to be that pure language that is going to be restored in the end times? The purpose of it is listed at the end of that verse. We are going to serve him with one accord. The purpose of language started at the Tower of Babel. Well, that's when languages got confused. But before that, the purpose of language was at Babel. They used their one language to communicate efficiently and effectively with one another. And they said, and let's go flip back to that since I'm doing a terrible job of saying it. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 11 and say, now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of, how are we going to say it? Are we going to say it like we say it in English, Shinar, or are we going to say it like Shinar, or I don't know. And they dwelt there, and they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves. Let us be scattered, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So they had one common purpose and motive for everything they were doing. They were worshiping their false idolatrous gods in one accord. And so what Yehovah did, Yehovah came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Yehovah said, indeed, the people are one. They were very united. And that doesn't mean they were just one race or ethnicity. I doubt it. By that, we all have, in our genetics, we have all kinds of colors of skin, all kinds of colors of hair and eyes. I doubt that's what it was. And these are our ancestors, so we all come from them. But they were one in purpose. That's the key, okay? That's why we have a language that is united, so that we can have one purpose and we can communicate that purpose and all go towards the same goal. And he said, indeed, the people are one and they have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. So come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another. And that's how he scattered them all over the face of the whole earth. So that's the first dispersion of people. Dispersion because of wickedness, dispersion because of disobedience to Yehovah and an unwillingness to worship him and him alone. But as he regathers us and as he brings us back, one of the ways that he's going to restore all things is by bringing us back to one language. So what is that language going to look like? That is difficult to say. I am not going to be the expert on that, but I think there is a lot of evidence in Scripture, which I'm not going to go into right now, that it is going to be Hebrew. And so, or some variation of Hebrew, even if it isn't exactly like what we speak at this exact moment. You can see definitely over the last 120 years or more that the Hebrew language, which was once considered a dead language, it wasn't actually dead, it was just written down and used in synagogues, not spoken in the home or in the marketplace. But now that it is, and has been restored, and that's been happening, it's a really cool story. Maybe I'll put a link to that in your handout so that you can check that out and see the really cool story of how the language was restored. But I want you to see that the purpose of it is so that we can be one in one accord worshiping him, and that we can call on his name, and we'll even know how to pronounce his name, and we'll be in a complete agreement on how to do that. We won't have any more arguments about that. To call on his name means to worship him and to serve him, to bring offerings to him, to please him in every way. It is the basis of the Shema. Hear, O Israel, Yehovah, our Elohim is one Elohim. So he says, at that time, I will restore to the peoples a pure language. And this is going to roll back all of the damage that has been done because of Babel. And that's going to be an impressive day. So I have a theory. And this theory goes into a lot of the things, the choices that I do, the things we put into our curriculum, the things that I teach my children, the way I live my life, decisions that I make. And here's my theory. My theory is that when we get to the millennium, when the kingdom happens, when Yeshua comes down and plants his feet on the Mount of Olives, that he's not going to just snap his fingers and wham, everything's going to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. I just don't think that's the way it's going to be. I don't think so, because we don't have a pattern of that from the first Exodus. When they got through the wilderness and entered the promised land, They had to kick out their enemies, and they had to cleanse the land, and they had to set up things. And yes, they got to inhabit houses they hadn't built, and they got to, kind of move in to towns and stuff. In most cases, not all cases. I think that we will be able to do that too, but I think most of it we are going to be given the task of settling and setting up the kingdom and putting law and order into place worldwide. And I say we because the parable that Yeshua gives with we've talked about this earlier in the week with the talents that he gives to his servants. And then he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a little thing. Now I'm going to make you ruler over many things. And that gives us a lot of precedent that he's looking to see how we are right now and how we are faithful and accountable with the little things he's given us. And then he wants to give us more responsibility then to help set up that kingdom. I just don't know exactly how it's going to be any more than the next person, but I don't believe that he's going to wave a magic wand and just fix the world. I think he's going to have the same Torah that he has now. The Torah will be the foundation of all things, and if it's the same and he never changes, right, then we can see now exactly how he's going to set that up. We can say, well, this is how justice is going to look like, and this is what the language is going to be like. Yes, language, we pervert it, but I think he's going to put it back to the way it's supposed to be. But let's talk about how will he look at us and say, that person has been responsible with a little bit of Hebrew that they had available to them, and I'm going to make them the teacher over this group over here. And this person over here, they were incredible with their language studies, and they have an advanced ability. I'm going to set them over this massive job and give them a huge piece of responsibility, because I'm so pleased with them. And this person over here, they said they didn't even want to learn any language at all until they got to the kingdom, because they knew Yeshua was going to just fix it for them. And you know what? They buried their talent. I'm going to make them learn it from scratch right now. And I would hate to be that person, because I would feel like you're scrambling to get caught up. If someone is speaking in a different language than what you know right now, how are you going to function in society? I just think it would be wise to be prepared. So that's one of my biggest motivations for wanting to learn Hebrew, wanting to teach it at Homeschooling Torah. And then there are so many more motivations. I think earlier in the week we talked about how important a phonetic alphabet is, and I want my children to have a good grasp of phonics and a good grasp of rational thought. I won't go into that anymore today, but one of the reasons that I want them to learn both English and Hebrew is because I want them to understand how those phonics rules work in all languages and have that rational ability to think and analyze and put into context. But yeah, I won't go any more into that. So other motivations for learning Hebrew. I had mentioned earlier in this week Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20. And this is, I'll start back in 16. Well, let me give you a little context before that. So Yeshua rose again on that first fruits after Passover, and they were starting to count all the way up until Shavuot, which is 50 days later. Okay, everyone in Israel was counting how many days it would be. But it was also what they were counting is how many days it had been since Yeshua rose from the dead, and it was alive and was back with them. And when 40 days had passed, okay, we're not quite to Shavuot, but we're almost there. The 11 disciples, it says in verse 16, the 11 disciples went away into Galilee to the mountain which Yeshua had appointed for them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And I'm not sure where all this is that they are talking about, but I'm guessing this is somewhere around that 40th day where they're having this conversation, or maybe this is stuff he talked to them about the entire 40 days. So sometime during that 40 days, it says in verse 18, Yeshua came and spoke to his disciples, his 11 disciples, and he said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So he has the authorities to be the ruler of all heaven and all earth, and it was given to him already. But notice what he does. He commissions 11 disciples at this point, and there'll be more if you go into Acts. but he commissions them and gives them a job to do while he's gone. And when he comes back to set up his kingdom, he's going to ask for an accounting, a report. And this commissioning has been passed down from generation to generation since that time, and he is still coming, and he's going to be asking for an account. He says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." This is important. "Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So we are to go. I'm speaking as if someone who's descending, so to speak, from those 11 disciples, because we heard the gospel because of their witness. He has given us a commission to go to all the nations of the earth. Well, how do you do that when all the nations of the earth speak so many languages? I mean, we are still in the time of Babel and of our confusion of languages. Yes, he died on the cross. Yes, he shed his blood for the new covenant, but we aren't quite there yet with all the benefits of the new covenant. We are still under the curse of the dispersions, curse of the scatterings that the Father did because of the people he created were disobedient to him. So while we have the promise of all the good that is coming in the kingdom, we have to live here with one foot in this world where everything is not okay yet. We just don't have it set. Someday we'll be under the full benefits of the new covenant, and there'll be no need for anyone to teach another. We won't have to do any more of these Homeschooling Torah videos. I don't need to teach anybody. You won't have to homeschool because your kids will already know it, but we aren't there yet. We still have one foot in the cursed world. He hasn't defeated every enemy quite yet. And so at this point we have to learn the languages of all the people in the world, and we have to go to them and we have to give them the gospel. It says in Romans 10, how will they hear? Now I'm actually going to read it. It says in Romans 10, verse 11, "For the scripture says, whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. He loves us all, right? He is the same Lord over all, and he is rich to all who call upon him. For whoever calls on the name of Jehovah shall be saved," it says in the Old Testament. And then it says a question that should be fairly obvious to us. While all people are welcome to receive that gift, not all people will, and here's why. It says, "How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher?" It implies there that we're supposed to be the ones preaching. We're supposed to be the ones telling. And if we can't speak their language, how can we give them the good news? And you know what? That's not even the gospel. That's math. How can you teach your children if you cannot make them understand your words? And if you're not an effective teacher and you cannot say things in a way that they understand, or if you have a relationship that makes it possible for them to hear you, then how will they hear? And this is true of just any topic that you're teaching, but this topic of telling people about Yeshua, about what he's done for us and about what he's going to do for us in the future, which that's the gospel, then how will they hear, and how will they believe, and how will they be saved? So that's a huge motivation. So yet another motivation. Right now, this fall, we are going to be having our Sukkot here in Michigan. Michigan is not Zion. It's cold in Michigan in October, and I am inviting all of you to come and join us for Sukkot. I hope you will. It's going to be awesome, but it's not going to be Zion. And if you can go to Israel, maybe I'm going to put a link to a chance for you to go to Israel below this, okay? Because frankly, above coming to Michigan and joining us for Sukkot, I hope that you could go to Israel. I really do. Because in Israel is where his name is placed forever. So Israel is the place where he designed us to be for the feast. That's where the weather is the correct weather for it. That's where we're supposed to go someday when Yeshua has set up his kingdom. We'll be able to bring up our offerings to him and give them to him. And that's just will be the seat of everything. It says, you know, in Isaiah that all nations will go up year by year. But having said that, I think it would be ideal if we could all go up to Israel for the feast right now. Sukkot, then in the spring, Passover, Pesach, and and unleavened bread, and in this early summer we have Shavuot, and all of those are eventually times that we will all be going up to the feast. We'll be able to see each other. We'll be able to be in community with each other. 3 times a year we'll be like, hey, how you doing? You know, it'll be awesome. But you can do it now, and a lot of people are. If you set aside a tenth of your money, you know, to that, and obviously we also have to take care of the poor and help those who teach us, and all of the things we are supposed to do with that tenth. We also, it's for going up for the feast. So think about that, you know, get your passport. Think about ways that you could travel. There are lots of really cool places that you can stay that are not terribly expensive, but the best thing to do is get connected. I do recommend campephraim.org, and that's just a great organization, and they will help you. They'll help you get there, but you're also going to need to know just a little bit of Hebrew, and that's just yet another motivation I have. So how do we learn language? Well, we don't have a language learning gene that just, wah, I have this gene and you don't, so I can learn languages and you can't. It's not true. If that were the case, I think it would be more accurate to say that we all do have a language learning gene given to us by our Creator. So you can't cop out and say, well, I just never have been good at learning languages. Frankly, all that means is that the parts of your brain, the neurons that help you learn and memorize, just have not actually been exercised the way that they should, and you can improve that. You can definitely make that better. So it takes effort and time to strengthen those language learning genes, the neurons that function in your brain, and it takes practice. So you can't just say, oh, I've never been any good at it. Please excuse the lawnmower in the background. Anyway, one of the first things you need to do is decide what is your motivation for learning a language, whether it's Hebrew or some other language that you feel called to learn so that you can share the gospel or whatever. Write that down, and I've given you a spot in your handout where you can do that. Secondly, now you need to make a goal, an actual time that you are going to work on it, because you can have all the motivation in the world, but unless you actually put a spot on your schedule for it, it's not going to happen. Some things about this time. It's really wise to think about when your brain is a little bit more alert, because I have found, I've tried a lot of different times to learn Hebrew. I've tried putting it on in the car when I'm driving. That works, but since I had a concussion in the year 2020, I've found that if I'm trying to think about too many things at once, my whole face fuzzes over. And that's a good sign to me that I'm pushing my neurons just a little too hard. I'm actually going to hurt myself. Could probably bring on a migraine that's going to last several days. And I'm like, no. That's not a smart idea. So I have found that I need to be well rested, which because I want to do this consistently, that means I just need to be well rested, right? I need to go to bed on time. I need to get up at the same time every day and be consistent about that. But having said that, I need to be well rested. I need to have some time where I'm not multitasking and thinking about many things at once. Somewhere quiet with not a lot of stimulation, like the TV not on, music not on. I'm not trying to carry on conversations or think about the grocery list at the same time I'm learning a language. That's not going to work. But it doesn't have to be a massively huge chunk of time. To me, 10 to 15 minutes works because I'm old, okay? And I feel like that's how it is for children when they're learning phonics too. My Word Power K and my Word Power 1 students, 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and they're kind of maxed out. And it's no different for us as adults. As we're learning a language, we can only do so much and we just start to wear out. Some people seem to be able to go 30 minutes. Maybe it is my concussion. Maybe I don't have the language learning gene, but I think my neurons just aren't quite as exercised as they should be. Me, it's about 15 minutes max and I'm just done. Sometimes I repeat a lesson 2 days in a row because I just can't hold it all in. And I find that the second day, everything sticks a lot better. So that's okay. What's the rush? When the rush is the Yeshua is coming back, yes, but I think he's looking for faithfulness and consistency more than anything. So the other thing I've noticed is that I need some review time. So I tend to study language in the morning, but I also need some review time. It's a great idea, let's say right before you sit down for lunch, you can flip open your phone and look at your flashcards and just, because I keep mine on my phone, and just kind of flip through only a few of them, maybe the ones that I just learned that morning. And then again, before bed, I'm laying down in bed, I have it on my phone, and I'll just kind of swipe through a few things. But other times I put on some music, just a variety of times that I come back to it during the day. Those repeated times help me learn. So I have to schedule them. That's the point. You have to make a goal, and by goal I mean you have to schedule it. You have to put it on your calendar, and if you don't, you won't get it done. And for me, I also have to put on a timer that reminds me I had scheduled it, because just putting it on a schedule and never putting a timer on means that I'll probably forget I put it on the schedule. So let's just be practical and let's be realistic about this. We're busy women and we won't have time to do it. Now for teaching your children, you've got to figure out a time every day. Where are you going to put it? And I do recommend that you do this 6 days a week. I don't actually study Hebrew on Sabbath, although my brain is going, and sometimes when it's on Sabbath and there are friends at our congregation who like to greet me or say a word they learned that week, or someone's reading the Torah portion and I'm like, oh, that's super cool, I want to look that word up. My brain is going, but I don't actively search that day and I don't actively study on that day. So, but really you do need it to be every day. Just like any language, you're speaking a language every day, right? Okay, so some other things you need to do. Let's talk about the actual how to learn a language, okay? So, just as you were a child and you learned to speak your native tongue, you heard it, and then as you got older, you comprehended it, and then as you got older, you tried to say the words yourself, and of course you made lots of silly mistakes, and your mom thought it was adorable, and she wrote all your silly things down in your baby book. That's how you're going to be too. It's no different. Hearing it and then comprehending it and then learning to speak it yourself is the very natural order of things. But I have found as an adult, I sometimes have to come back at it from a new angle, and that is learning to speak it and then comprehending the thing that came out of my mouth, and then when I hear others speak it, I can understand what they say. So it feels to me like it goes in the backwards order. So first of all, I'm going to learn to speak and say and write a language that I do not understand. There are a lot of Hebrew words that I can read, and I don't yet know what the vocabulary word meant. So I'm still at that very first step. I'm producing the language, but I don't understand everything, and I certainly am not to the point where I can just sit in a conversation with native Hebrew speakers that they are going full blast and I can understand what they are saying. So it feels to me like when it's not your native language, it goes through the backwards order. Now for reading, you start with the alphabet. The alphabet is the most important thing and the most difficult for us as we learn a language such as Hebrew, because that is a different alphabet than our language in English. So spend a good amount of time with flashcards, apps, or whatever it takes for you to really get a grasp on that alphabet. When you're doing the alphabet, there are two things I want you to do. First of all, be able to say the Alephbeit in order from beginning to end, just like you can say the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I can't do it that fast in Hebrew. Alephbeit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. You'll be able to go in order all the way through, be able to say the name of the letters. But you also need to be able to know what is the sound that that letter makes. And if it is a language like Hebrew, where some of the letters look different, and when they're at the end of a word, we call those sophit letters, then you also need to be able to identify which ones have those and so on. And then later, as you learn all the dageshes and everything, you need to be able to identify which ones. And we're going to have a language learning course this year on our YouTube channel. So you can sign up for it. I'm going to put a link below the video, and you can join us as we go through all of those particulars. So I won't get into it all today. But you also need to learn the vowels. In English, we kind of do that all at the same time, sort of. We say our alphabet, but we don't necessarily identify to our children which one of those are vowels. We go back later and we say that's a long vowel, that's a short vowel, and so on. And it's going to be a little bit similar in Hebrew. Now the vowels, there's a lot of argument about when they were developed and who developed them and so on, but I just go straight for it. I think it's simpler for me as an adult when I'm learning Hebrew to go ahead and learn the vowels, because they make sure that my pronunciation is accurate. They just really help with that. so that I'm not having to completely rely on rote memory. I'm not a fan of that in learning a language any more than I am, as we talked earlier in the week, about learning sight words. I don't think sight words for Hebrew is a good idea. I think you need to learn the phonetic structure, learn the consonant and then the vowel, consonant, vowel, syllable by syllable, syllable by syllable. So it's very important that you can read that syllable. I'm not talking about comprehending what it means right now. I'm just talking about sounding it out. Separate the meaning for a second, and let's just get really fluent with being able to read all the syllables in Hebrew, so that no matter what Hebrew word is thrown at you, you are able to read it, exactly like what we talked about earlier in the week. Now, the next step, which I find difficult, because just like in English, some of the letters or some of the sounds have multiple letters that can make that sound. So for instance, the vav and the beit, so they can both make a v sound, and there's two that make a s sound, and there's two that make a t sound, and there's two that make a k sound. So those can be really confusing for those of us that are new. I'm sure if we grew up in it, it wouldn't be so bad. But what you need is some spelling practice. This sounds like learning English. As you go through your vocabulary words, as whatever program you're using, and you start learning vocabulary, sometime have someone else quiz you. So how do you spell this word? How do you spell that word? And you have to spell it back to them using, of course, Hebrew letters, and go ahead and put your vowels in there for that kind of a purpose, okay? Then you also want to copy. Just like when you're learning English, we strongly recommend copywork. I'm going to strongly recommend that you copy the Torah in Hebrew. I am so far from getting this done, it's not even funny. I'm way back in Genesis. But go verse by verse. And then other thing I do is on busy days, and I have a lot of busy days, I just copy one verse out of whatever I'm reading in my Bible that day. I have an app on my phone that shows me that verse in Hebrew with the consonants and the vowels. I'll put a link to that app below. And I actually just copy that right out of my app into my journal. So that daily copying really is amazing, and what it helps solidify. I'm sounding out each syllable as I copy it. I'm learning new vocabulary. I'm understanding how all the different parts of speech work together, because I know what it says in English. And I'm also noting where the translators didn't seem to translate it the way it would be obviously translated, and I have to think, why did they do that? And that leads me down amazing bunny trails as I try to learn. Sometimes I get really distracted there, but copy. It's super important. One thing I did not do as I was learning beginning to learn Hebrew, and I'm going to have to go back and do that now. I did a video a couple days ago about the importance of cursive, and I didn't do that with myself when I was learning Hebrew. I just did the block letters, the kind of traditional Hebrew font, and I didn't learn cursive. So I'm going to have to put some thought into that. How am I going to learn cursive? I think it really would have sped me up, but I was so intimidated at first because the cursive looked very different from the letters of the print that I was reading. So we're back to all the same things we were talking about earlier in the week, but I think I would change that for the future. And then finally, read aloud. So not only copy from the Bible, but read aloud that verse. Read aloud modern Hebrew words as well, and oftentimes they don't have the vowels in them, so it gets easier as you go along, and you can kind of understand what that vowel would be. And I still kind of think the vowel as I'm reading those syllables. But reading aloud helps you so much. You're going to be halting, you're going to be slow, you're going to feel like a kindergartner or first grader, and that's okay, because you are. You really are. But read aloud every day. And if you have your family learning with you, go in a circle and everyone read a verse aloud. It's super good for you. Also, listen to native speakers, and the best way I'm going to tell you to do this is to go on YouTube and listen to them. I also have some websites I'm going to recommend in your handout that where you can hear a native Israeli speaker reading from the Torah. And that is amazing to me. You can also hear prayers, songs, there's all kinds of things. Turn on the news, try to go on Jerusalem Post and see if you can read some of it in Hebrew, but listen to the native speakers interact with actual Hebrew-speaking people, and that's the best tip I can give you. Now, obviously, I can't understand most of what they say, but throughout everything, I'm like, oh, I understood that. I think I knew what that word was if I could just think for a second. It all sounds familiar. And the more I do it, the easier it becomes. Not there yet. So, as far as vocabulary is important, because without vocabulary, you're not going to be able to understand what they're saying. But did you know that there are 300 words in any language that make up about 65% of everything that is written, at least? And so you can just start with a basic vocabulary. In our Word Power series at Homeschooling Torah, we have over all the years from kindergarten through 8th grade, we have 1,000 of the most common words used in the Hebrew Bible. And so what's going to happen is you can read a majority of your Bible by learning those 1,000 words. So that's a great place to start on your vocabulary. As far as the most common words that are used in modern Hebrew and out and about, it's probably the same ones you use in your everyday life. So I'm going to put a link below the video to an article by Tim Ferriss where he lists out the most common words in English, and I recommend that you learn what those words are in Hebrew. But it's still going to take your brain time to connect and hear it and comprehend it, but that's a great place to start. Next, you also want to learn the grammar structure, and this goes for any language that you're learning. It has a structure to its grammar. So for instance, in English, we have, say, about 6 different sentence patterns. And if you can learn these 6 sentences in Hebrew, or let's say you're learning, one daughter learned Korean, I have another daughter that learned Russian, I have a son that learned some German, didn't get very far. The fascinating thing is, even if you learn computer languages and code and stuff, it's going to be similar to learning a language in this aspect. So, because there's a certain order to how things have to be in order for it to make sense. So, in English, these are some common ones. The apple is red, so it helps you describe an adjective there. The red apple, okay? The apple is red. And then here's another way of doing an adjective. It is John's apple, so you're showing possession there. So that's a really important thing. So you can say that, wait, that's my taxi, don't take it, when, or whatever. I give John the apple. So that's learning an indirect object and a direct object. We give him the apple. So you have to not only be able to say John, but you have to be able to say a pronoun, him. So all your pronouns, him, her, she, and so on. We give him the apple. I already did that one. He gives it to John, and she gives it to John. So we've gotten a lot of our nouns, action verbs. We need being verbs, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. We need pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, adjectives, and adverbs. So all of those things. And if you're trying to learn Hebrew, we do include some of these in our Word Power curriculum. We're not really deep into these. We just touch on it. So if you want to get deeper into it, you're going to want to get a full Hebrew curriculum, and I've got some recommendations in your handout. Another thing you can do is learn the cognates. So a cognate is a word that sounds the same in both languages, and the best example I can give you, if it was Spanish, we'd say banana, banana, so that's easy. In Hebrew, it's coffee or cafe. I don't even know how to say it, but coffee is the same in both. And so what differs is the pronunciation. It's most often your more modern words that are going to be cognates, and we have these in our language. The word baptize in our Bible comes from comes through Latin back to the Greek, baptizo. So it's the same, it's a cognate, and we can easily learn those. So that knocks off a ton of your vocabulary. But one of the things that I like to do is find out, even if it's not a cognate, what is the root? Where did that come from? Why was it called that? So I really enjoy Jeff Benner's Ancient Hebrew Lexicon, because he explains how words are related to each other, the word families and the roots that they come from, and why it was given that sound. Like, where did that come from when Jehovah created it? What was he thinking? What's the word picture that gives it that sound? And then I love following those word pictures and those roots through the languages as we have dispersed out from Babel. Hebrew was the predecessor to Greek, and Greek is the predecessor to Latin, and Latin is the predecessor to many of our European languages. So I love learning about that, and that is something we definitely include include in our word power curriculum as you get into the older grades, and they learn vocabulary and spelling, and we trace those from the ancient Hebrew, and it's super fun. But you can just get Jeff Benner's Ancient Hebrew Lexicon. I like even opening it on my phone, and I've got all the links to this in your handout. So you need to make sure you interact with the language daily. Go on YouTube, read your Bible, join Homeschooling Torah's community. Our Hebrew group is incredibly quiet. I'm not sure anyone's talked but me. Let's join our club and you know, interact with us. And especially as we put videos on YouTube this year, we're going to have 2 videos every week starting the end of August, and you're going to be able to learn the basics. But most of all, check out the people in the comments and make, you know, come on over to the Homeschooling Torah community, and let's make a community of Hebrew learners, okay? You can also do that on a lot of apps like Duolingo. You can you know, get all your friends to join it with you, and you can tag them and say, hey, I scored this, what'd you score today? So it's kind of a fun way to learn. You can also get on Skype or Zoom and have daily spoken practice. That is going to take a little bit of finagling on your part to find a practice partner and speak Hebrew with them. And that's especially good if there's no one else in your home that's interested in learning Hebrew. I'm hoping that you'll have that daily spoken practice with your own children, because that would be ideal. If you are teaching word power to your children or handing them the worksheets, make sure you don't get lost. Make sure that your children aren't the ones going, we need daily spoken practice, and my mom's not participating because she's got lost way back there in lesson 3 and we're on lesson 30. So, you know, hold yourself accountable to your own children and make yourself your own study group. But if you need others as well, getting on Skype and Zoom is amazing that you can do that. I also recommend Pimsleur. Pimsleur is awesome, and that's one of the ones that I do like to listen to in the car. I can't always, when I'm driving, repeat back because, like I said, I get the face fuzz thing, but I like listening to it. And they have so many cool things on their app. If you get their app, I think you have to pay $19.99 a month or something like that, and they have a lot more cool features. But if you can't afford that, go on and see if you can find a used copy of some of their old CDs or audios from, like, their downloads from a while back. They're just as good, and you can get them at a greatly discounted price, and then listen to Pimsleur. Listen, I think that's one of the best resources. And by the way, Pimsleur has many languages, so it's good in Hebrew, but it's good in other languages as well. I highly recommend it. Like I said, my daughter used it for Korean. I have a daughter that when she was learning Russian, though, she just got an actual friend over in Russia, and they would talk by Skype, and they would just have so much fun texting each other. And then once a week they had a time that they would just get on and talk to each other. And that girl was trying to get, you know, the ability to have a job over here or over there in Russia, what she needed to be able to speak English for it. And then my daughter was trying to learn Russian. One of the things she was said that, you know, the second largest language group that comes into the nation of Israel and makes aliyah is those from Russia. And now with the war in Ukraine, that is even more than when she was learning it. So if we're going to be going into Israel, you're going to hear English, you're going to hear Hebrew, and you're going to hear Russian and other languages as well. It's going to be really cool. Definitely do look for free resources. You don't have to spend a lot of money to learn Hebrew. It's just blown away by how much is available to you for free. I do recommend, again, YouTube, but don't be quick to just chunk down a lot of money when you can do so much for free. The difficulty with free is it doesn't hold you accountable. So if you're going to do something free, you need to set up some kind of accountability system for yourself, because even though you have the motivation and even though you've scheduled it, without another human being motivating you and holding you accountable, you're going to have a hard time. So free is awesome as long as you can hold yourself to it. By the way, adults, can we learn better than kids? Yes, we can. The research shows that we can actually learn better than our children can. And that's crazy to me, because I always heard that children will just naturally pick up languages. And yeah, that's true. They naturally do, because here's why. They're learning a language right now, and their neurons are primed for learning. And on top of that, they're in school and they're learning arithmetic facts, and they're learning spelling, and they're learning their facts for history, and they're memorizing Bible verses, and they're copying things, and they're learning. Their neurons are primed for it. That's probably why they are learning it better. But If you will sit down with your children and not just teach them, but learn with them in every subject, learn, push yourself, constantly increase the neural activity in your brain and increase your memory, increase your ability to think and concentrate and read for longer periods of time, read faster. Your neurons will be just as good as your kids, and you'll have one added bonus, and that is life experience. Life experience is amazing when you're learning a language because you're going to draw connections to things you've already learned in your life, and those connections mean that things stick. You'll remember them. So you have that advantage over your children if you'll just go to school. Go to school with them. Don't just tell them to do it. Don't say, I'm too tired. Go get a snack, just like I tell them. Eat healthy, nutritious food that feeds your cells. Stay away from sugar. Get your sleep. Lower your carb intake. Don't eat donuts. All of these things, but most of all, get your sleep. Don't drink too much coffee and run around on adrenaline all day, and sit at the table and discipline yourself to learn, to increase the ability of your brain, and you can actually learn more and faster than your children can. And what an example you would all set, and what a fun time you would have too. When you're learning a language, use mnemonics, use flashcards. We talked about this in an earlier video, but flashcards and that review from flashcards is proven to be the best way to learn something. So definitely make yourself flashcards. I said make yourself. Get out old-fashioned 3x5 cards. You can buy them inexpensively at any dollar store or Walmart or anywhere like a big box store. You can get them on Amazon, super cheap. Organize them into a little 3x5 card box. But making them yourself will help you learn things, and then flip through your own flashcards. Having said that, I also like to have all the apps on my phone. And I think it's because all of that staggered practice as we go throughout the day. Sometimes I'm using my flashcards at my scheduled time, and other times I'm somewhere where I have 3 minutes to spare and I can flip open an app. And that staggered practice really reinforces my learning. So some of my favorite apps, and I'm going to put them in your handout so you have links to all of this. Duolingo, Quizlet, I like Quizlet a lot. Memrise, awesome. There's one called Hebrew Flashcards on my iPhone, and I'm pretty sure they also have it on Android because I used to have an Android phone. Hebrew Flashcards, just a great one for beginning to learn the Alephbeit with all of the consonants and vowels, so I do recommend that one. My kids loved that one when they were little. Hello Talk and Drops, those are all some great ones, and there are more. I'm sure I've missed some. You can put them in the comments right now as you're listening. Share what apps you love. We should all pay attention and write them down in our handout and add it to the ones that I put. Embrace mistakes, okay? Remember I said you're going to be a child. You won't learn everything that you hear in one lesson. In fact, you never really do learn everything about a language. There are words in the English language that you still do not know. And if you stop to think about that, it humbles you, and it also makes you realize how normal you are. You're not ever to the point where you know a language. As Tim Ferriss says, you just get used to a language. And when you're used to the language and you can use it in everyday life, people say you know it. But do you? You're always going to learn more. So embrace the mistakes. Don't apologize all the time. I'm talking to myself here, Anne. Don't say, oh, sorry, all the time. And just go ahead and plunge in. Make mistakes. Feel free to laugh when you say something funny and everyone else kind of giggles. It is okay, because the very act of trying is going to cement it. When you go to Sabbath, try to use Hebrew with the people around you, and don't worry that they will think you are stupid. I am the owner of Homeschooling Torah, and I make so many mistakes. I can do it fine at home by myself, and then I go there and my brain just goes out the door and I cannot remember anything, and I feel like such an idiot. And I'm just learning. I'm getting used to it. I have to be humble, and I have to be not afraid. Just be confident. Just start in, and everyone else will gain confidence from your ability to dive in. Okay, so do it. We'll all do it together. You're going to go through these stages as you start to be able to make a conversation. And I love Pimsleur again, said that before, because it helps you learn to have a conversation. But from conversation, you're going to go to mastery, where you can actually have like a paragraph's long conversation with people and really get heart to heart with them. And a friend of mine who used Pimsleur all the way through all of the levels, she said that one day she woke up and realized, she was thinking in Hebrew. And she went, wow, that's crazy, because she was born in America, in Minnesota, and suddenly she is thinking like an Israeli. And that's the cool goal. I know sometimes when I'm hearing a teacher talk through the Torah portions or teach something about the Torah, sometimes my brain will hear a word and immediately start to translate it to Hebrew, and that excites me. So you're going to go through those levels as you get to mastery. One of the things that you do need to work on, though, is that you work on your accent and your intonation. I also need to work on this. I am from Michigan. Michigan, the way we form our words is very different from how they do it in Israel. I like to, by the way, learn Israeli Hebrew more so than, say, New York City style or Tennessee style. That's a thing, it is. So I try very hard to listen to native Israeli speakers, because that's where I want to live someday. When my master comes and sets his feet down, that will be my home. And it's not my home now, but it will be. So that's what I try to listen to the most and speak. I don't know if that's how he'll make it sound, but again, I have a feeling that he's going to say to them, you guys, you know what? Well done. Good job for bringing back that language. That's just, so my logic is I'm going to go with that crowd because they're doing a great job. Syllables, as you listen to a language, I just said language. You see how I emphasize language? That's an accent on a syllable. Well, another reason to learn syllables in English and in any other language is so that you know which syllable gets the accent. Why do we say Yeshua? That Yeshua. Why does that one get an accent? Well, there are rules to that in any language, including Hebrew, and you will start to learn those rules. And as you learn the rules, you're going to have to go back and fix the things you've already learned. So say it, say it, say it. Listen, listen, listen. When you listen, try to copy it. Pay attention to how it sounds. Ask your husband or your children to say, did I say it just like them? And they'll tell you if you did or didn't. And be humble, and be willing to keep doing it and to be aware of it. But also, learn about the culture. As you learn about the culture of a people, what foods they eat, what the climate is like, what they enjoy doing, what the homes are built like, what the holidays, the biblical holidays, the culture of the Jewish people, it helps you learn the accents and the intonation. I know that's crazy sounding, but basically you're going to stop thinking like an American and you're going to start thinking like a citizen of that kingdom, which is really cool. And as you do, I am just absolutely convinced it helps your pronunciation, okay? Now, if you were using this language learning to learn a language where you're going to preach the gospel, so we have some friends in Myanmar. So as I talk to my friends in Myanmar, I hear how they pronounce things. I used to call the name of their country Myanmar. And now I know it's Myanmar because I'm speaking with them and I'm learning. I'm not sure how far I will get into that language, but it's Spanish. I have a dear friend that lives in Puerto Rico. I don't think I say many things correct. But she, as I listen to her and I learn about her culture, and she sent me a box of all of the favorite foods that they like to eat there. And then one time when she visited Michigan, she brought me some yummy food. She stopped at her aunt's house in Detroit, and she prepared it for me and then came and saw me. And we, that was so cool, because now as I have an understanding of what it's like there, and I feel like it's improved my Spanish. I have a long ways to go. And now we have a helicopter. We have a lot of sounds today. Trains, helicopters, lawnmowers. Welcome to Michigan. So, wow. So, lastly, and then we're going to close, add another language to improve the first ones. So I just talked about Spanish, and we have a lot of Spanish-speaking customers. It would be amazing if we could put Homeschooling Torah into Spanish language. I don't know if it will get done. I think we would need volunteers to come and all help to get that done together, because I don't think it's going to happen on my schedule. I don't have time. But having said that, I have a desire to be able to communicate with those customers, and they want to learn English, and they all together, we can, it's so fun in an email. I might have to translate everything into Google Translate, from Spanish to English, and then send it off to that customer. but we always have those Hebrew words, shalom. You know, I mean, that's our common pure tongue. It's really cool. But continue to learn. Continue to push yourself. Don't ever stop. I think that's just about everything that I wanted to say, except that I wanted to just close also with the thought that as you continue to learn other languages, you should also apply the skills you learned in learning a language to other skills. So again, this applies to learning English. This applies to learning math, because as you learn Hebrew and discover how you retain and what methods help you remember and what methods didn't do much for you, apply that to math for your children. See, putting yourself in the seat of a learner and learning a language helps you feel so much more compassion for your own students, and doing it with them means that you won't push them too hard. You won't have unrealistic expectations. Your temper will go down, and your impatience with them, because you will also need that grace from them as you are learning things. Apply those skills that you're learning in Hebrew to math, to science, to scripture memory, to learning about the Torah. So as new people come in and they are brand new to Torah and they're just so excited, but they're also very at a new level and they don't know all of the things you know, be patient with people. Think about how you learned it, and just because you explained something once does not mean it's going to stick, right? So you need to say it again and think of a new way to explain things, and so on. I think I have another train coming, so I'm gonna just mention that you could do this with your children in the kitchen when you're learning to cook. Be patient with them. If they don't get the scrambled eggs correct, then do it again. Think of a new way to try it. Go online and watch it. I'm gonna have to stop because there comes the train. I think we're just gonna have to give away a coupon. Don't you guys think so? I mean, it just, with all the noise we've had today, this has got to be a coupon. I'm gonna do a special thing right now. I'm gonna give a coupon to Lydia Lou Hunt. I think it says Lydia Lou Hearn because she wasn't married yet, but her book, the Alephbeit, and I'm gonna give you a coupon so that you can get either the hardbound book or the ebook. And I really do encourage you to go check out her website, lydialoulanguages.com. And so we'll give you a coupon for that. And that's gonna only be good for today, so I'll stick that below the video. So shalom. Thank you for listening to me today. Lahitraot, that means see you later. And let's all do this together. So join me on the community. Let's not stop this conversation just because all of the craziness. Shalom.